Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are reviewing the Disney Plus original series, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Season 1. And I have to say, I kind of finished the show thinking like, what the fuck did I just watch?
I remember you texting me that. Honestly, I have the exact same question, which kind of makes me feel shitty because the show kind of has this built-in defense against criticism.
Right.
But I want to make sure that people understand the difference between trolling and critiquing. We're doing the latter.
Right. Yeah. We'll get all into it later on in this episode when we review the show. Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week, including the news that Harrison Ford has been cast as Thunderbolt Ross in the MCU. Also, a bunch of release dates for MCU films have been pushed back, and the Legion of Superheroes is getting an animated film coming in early 2023.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. Before you do that, guys, don't forget to join us on Patreon, where we not only have bonus content, including top 10 episodes and bloopers every month, but you also get access to our new Infinity Crisis Marvel vs. DC deck building card game that Jonathan and I made. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Joseph and I plan on playing the game live on our Discord server, which you get access to if you're a patron later this month. So look forward to that. Our lowest Patreon tier is only $2 a month, and for $10, you get all of that, and you get to become an executive producer of the show to help us determine our episode content.
Yeah, check everything out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. But with that out of the way,
quick to the no prize.
A no prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week, in honor of National Hispanic Heritage Month, which ended October 15th, we asked you guys who is your favorite Hispanic Marvel or DC character, either from film or television or comics, and why. We got so many great answers for this. It was impossible to narrow down the answers to 3 honorable mentions and a no prize winner, but we did it anyway, and we feel really bad about it. But our first honorable mention goes to Eric Mizell, who said,
"My favorite Hispanic character is Crazy Jane from Doom Patrol. She's excellently played by Diane Guerrero on the HBO Max show. Her performance transforms Grant Morrison's creation to a genuine, complex person with insane powers and a snarky attitude." If you've watched this show, then you already know this is the correct answer. If you haven't seen the show yet, then you should re-examine your life and start watching.
Yeah, if you're not watching Doom Patrol, what are you doing? Like, literally, what are you doing?
You should be watching Doom Patrol. It's a fantastic show. And one of its best characters is Crazy Jane, played incredibly by Diane Guerrero, who does not only have to play the character of Crazy Jane, but a slew of other characters that exist within the mind of Kay. It's probably an actor's dream, and she does it so well, it's unbelievable.
I'm a big fan of Diane Guerrero, for sure. She blows me away every season. So great answer, Eric. Our next honorable mention goes to Miranda PF, who said,
"Hi, I'll break the rules again because as a Latina myself, it's very difficult to choose one. I'm mostly a DC fan, but this time I chose Marvel characters. First, since I was a teenager, I loved Maya Lopez because she's a unique character, a badass fighter. She's both a Native American and Latina. Also, there are some amazing legacy characters like Miguel O'Hara and Robbie Reyes. I hope DC and Marvel keep creating these interesting characters that represent our communities in non-stereotypical and diverse ways. Thanks, guys."
Oh yeah, so many great Marvel Hispanic characters. Miranda mentioned 3 right there, including Maya Lopez, who is the hero known as Echo. She's the deaf former love interest of Daredevil, who became her own crime fighter and will be getting her own show next year on Disney+. She also said Miguel O'Hara, who is Spider-Man 2099. If you guys want to know more about him, check out the comics or check out our podcast episode where we pit Spider-Man 2099 against Batman Beyond.
Yeah, and we're going to be seeing him in an upcoming film, Across the Spider-Verse, voiced by Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Lastly, she named Robbie Reyes, who is one of the Ghost Riders. The one with the car who was played by Gabriel Luna in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show. All fantastic characters. Really great answer, Miranda.
Our final honorable mention goes to Scott Camacho, who said,
"In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm going to say Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle. I was introduced to him in the Young Justice TV shows. I love him in the animated movies, and I really can't wait for him to make his debut on the big screen. It's going to be awesome. For Marvel, I'm going to say Miles Morales, another upcoming name coming into the superhero world. I can't wait to see more of these guys.
Yeah, I still remember when Jaime Reyes became Blue Beetle. It was during the Infinite Crisis storyline in the comics, and he has such a cool aesthetic, and I think it's just going to look amazing on screen when he gets his own film. Of course, he's being played by Solo Maridueña, and it's just perfect casting. I can't wait for the movie.
Yeah, Scotty also mentioned Miles Morales, who is of African-American and Puerto Rican descent in the comics. Of course, we all know Miles Morales. He headlined his own movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and is going to be in the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse as well. Scotty was not the only one to give the answer of Blue Beetle, though. Jaime Reyes was by far the most given answer among those who called in, such as Carson Miklas, Anka Shra, Landon Parker, and Miggy Matanguihan. Thanks to all of you who called in with your answer. We also heard from Brandon Estergard, who said his favorite was Bane, Lizzie Dyer-Arney, who gave the answer of Jessica Cruz, Green Lantern, and Jacob Bell and Noah Terry, who both gave the answer of Luis from the Ant-Man movies.
But the winner of this week's No Prize is Jose Marcial, who said,
"My favorites are tied between the three big trans-dimensional Hispanic characters. There's Vibe, there's America Chavez, and Sideways. But I'm going to have to actually you a little bit. When you said Namor's wings reminded you of hummingbirds, that's actually very fitting because in Aztec culture, they believe that hummingbirds are the souls of fallen warriors. And it's actually the symbol of the war god Huitzilopochtli. So yeah, very fitting.
And there you go. I learned something today. Thank you very much, Jose, for teaching us that hummingbirds were actually important to Mayan and Aztec culture, which is what the Atlantean, or Talocan rather, race is based off of in the upcoming Wakanda Forever movie. They're the underwater breathers.
Yeah, hummingbirds in Mayan culture acted as like the messengers between the gods and the people, they believed.
Yeah, that's something I never knew about. I always thought Huitzilopochtli was represented by an eagle, but apparently it's also by a hummingbird. So the Aztecs revered both eagles and hummingbirds equally, which is fascinating. In that regard, I think Jose has turned my outlook entirely on Namor the Submariner's ankle wings in the upcoming film. I think it's pretty appropriate now that they kind of vibrate like hummingbird wings.
Yeah, and I really liked his answers of Vibe, America Chavez, and Sideways. I feel like if there was ever going to be a crossover between Marvel and DC on film, it would be because of those characters.
Yeah, and of course we did a duel between Vibe and America Chavez in an episode a few months ago. Check that out if you're interested. But congrats again to Jose Marcial for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, last week we heard in a podcast called The Hot Mic with John Rocha and Jeff Snyder, formerly of The Wrap. They said that Harrison Ford would be replacing the late William Hurt as General Thunderbolt Ross in the MCU. This news was independently verified by slashfilm.com and confirmed. This is huge news. Honestly, when the rumor first started going around, one of our executive producers, John Starosky, posted it in our Discord channel. And right away, I was like, fake news. Like, I didn't believe it. It just totally sounded like a rumor to me. Because it almost seemed like too good to be true. You know, kind of like a fanboy's dream to have Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner join the MCU. But then all of a sudden, it turns out it was true all along. And I can't say good enough things about this because it is essentially a fanboy dream. You know, if you're going to cast old, gruff actors who really give off a get off my lawn type vibe, you can't do better than Harrison Ford. He makes an awesome General Thunderbolt Ross. Now, rumors that he's going to show up first in the upcoming Captain America New World Order movie first. And it's heavily rumored that he will be showing up as Thunderbolt Ross in the upcoming Thunderbolts film as potentially the Red Hulk. Now, I don't know if Harrison Ford is the type who would put on a mocap suit and actually act out the Red Hulk. They might just, do a facial performance for him. But that's another thing to get excited about, to have this iconic actor play another iconic role, such as the Red Hulk.
Yeah, I've seen fan art already of Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk, and I gotta say, it looks really damn good. If the movie looks as good as what I saw, then it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, great news. super psyched about this. And apologies to John Starosky for ever doubting his rumors, although he posts like a lot of rumors.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. John, you already know this. We love you. But the news about this recast and how exciting it is brings us to our question of the week.
If you could recast any one actor in Marvel or DC with a dream actor of your choice, who would it be and why?
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before October 22nd. In other Marvel news, less exciting news, downright sad news, we learned that the delay of the Blade movie, which was caused due to a director replacement and a script rewrite, has caused a chain reaction of other Marvel Studio film delays. To go through it all, basically, Blade, which originally was supposed to come out about a year from now, almost exactly November 3rd, 2023, that got pushed back a whole year to September 6th, 2024. Which was the original date that Deadpool 3 was supposed to come out, which we just recently got exciting news about in that it's also going to star Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That film has been delayed only a couple months, fortunately, from September 6th, 2024 to November 8th, 2024, which was the original date that Fantastic Four was going to come out and kick off Phase 6 of the MCU. So Fantastic Four got pushed from November 8th about 3 months to February 14th, 2025. So Fantastic Four now has a Valentine's Day release date, which might be fitting considering there's a strong romance between Reed Richards and Sue Storm on the team. Marvel did have a yet-to-be-revealed film on that Valentine's Day release date that got pushed to November 7th, 2025, which was the original release date of Avengers Secret Wars. And that got pushed to May 1st, 2026. So now we have Avengers The Kang Dynasty kicking off the summer of 2025, and Avengers Secret Wars coming out a year later, kicking off the summer movie season in 2026. Thankfully, this move really only seems to affect most of the Phase 6 schedule, which was just entering pre-production, just got announced. So the effect doesn't feel too massive, especially since a lot of these release date changes were only by a few months. You know, Captain America New World Order, that didn't get affected, neither did the Thunderbolts movie or Avengers The Kang Dynasty.
Honestly, when I heard about the pause in production on the Blade film, I was kind of hoping that it would switch release dates with another film, not push everything back.
Right.
It kind of sounds like Mahershala Ali really wants to get Blade right, and he doesn't want to settle for just any script. He wants the film to be fantastic, which makes sense because he's a 2-time Oscar-winning actor.
Right. Oh, as he should. That's what we need. We need for the actors to really push for projects that are as strong as they can be. Especially considering the dwindling quality of the MCU films as of late, at least in Phase 4, you want the MCU films to be great going forward. Yeah, I mean, the last Marvel Studios release was not good. You know, the last Disney Plus television show was She-Hulk, which was not great. Werewolf by Night, thankfully, was pretty damn solid. I really enjoyed that, and hopefully Wakanda Forever is the start of this bounce back for Marvel in the quality of their stuff.
So you admit that Marvel sucks?
No, I'm just saying that, you know, we're in a valley, but that we're going to go right back up to a peak and things are going to be awesome again.
I feel like DC is like higher on that
DC has
peak
never experienced a peak.
Marvel.
It's been all valley and even lower valleys and then like underwater and then back up to like a low valley.
Man, we live on the peak.
All right. Okay. Delusional, but okay.
Well, I think this next news item will prove it. We are getting a Legion of Superheroes animated film early next year, starring Supergirl. The story is going to follow Supergirl, who's still devastated by the loss of Krypton, as she struggles to adjust to her new life on Earth. Superman's going to be mentoring her, and he's going to suggest that she leave her space-time to attend Legion Academy in the 31st century. There she's going to make new friends and a new enemy, Brainiac 5, which is interesting because Brainiac 5 is actually a hero and member of the Legion, but maybe he's like a rival or something like that.
Well, maybe they'll go like the Brainiac 13 route where a future version of Brainiac possesses a past version of Brainiac.
Maybe, but I could also see this just like being a life lesson for Kara in that not all Brainiacs are the same and she shouldn't judge a book on its cover. Maybe something like that. The film looks like it's going to be pretty packed with a ton of characters. Not only are Superman, The Flash, and Batman going to be in the movie, voiced by Darren Criss, Matt Bomer, and Jensen Ackles, respectively, but we're also going to see Dawnstar, Phantom Girl, Bouncing Boy, Timberwolf, Brainiac 4, Mon-El, Cosmic Boy, Chemical King, Brainiac, Solomon Grundy?
What?
Yeah, Arms Fall Off Boy, Brainiac 2, Shadow Lass, Allura, Daisy Lightfoot, Triplicate Girl, Invisible Kid, and Brainiac 3. So many Brainiacs.
That is a huge roster of characters, but that's not too surprising considering that the Legion of Superheroes probably consists of more members than any other superhero team in existence.
It's massive. It is massive. And I'm really excited to see them on screen because I feel like outside of maybe some CW TV shows and like the Justice League cartoons, we haven't really seen these guys before, like in a feature film. So I'm excited.
Can you give a little bit of backstory on who the Legion of Superheroes are for those who may not know?
They are a group of teen superheroes that exist in the 31st century. And a lot of them are inspired by the heroes that exist in the present day continuity of DC Comics.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have to do a dual episode with them against one of the Marvel teams.
Yeah, totally. Like maybe that'll be our next team duel. We'll have to discuss it with our executive producers.
Now, is this movie going to be in the same style as the other recent DC animated films? I think it's called the Tomorrowverse.
Yes, yeah, the Tomorrowverse. It is in the Tomorrowverse. It's in that same continuity as like The Long Halloween, Man of Tomorrow, and Justice Society World War II.
And the recent Green Lantern, Beware My Power.
Which was great. Great. I really liked that, and I'm really looking forward to this. We don't have a release date yet. Again, it's coming out early next year, though. But I think that does it for the news in this episode. Now let's move on to the main event, where we break down our thoughts on the Disney Plus series She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Season 1.
Okay, She-Hulk Attorney at Law is a series that was showrun and written by Jessica Gao and stars Tatiana Maslany, Tim Roth, Jamila Jamil, and Mark Ruffalo. It was announced in 2019 for Disney Plus, and at the time of its announcement, I was really looking forward to it, especially because it was billed as a legal comedy in the vein of Ally McBeal. And not only was, our mom a fan of Ally McBeal in the 90s, and I have sort of a nostalgic tie there, but I also think the She-Hulk series has always been one of Marvel's most consistently funny comic books. Back when John Byrne was writing She-Hulk stories in the 80s, to the more recent 2000s run by Dan Slott, the She-Hulk books have often been more of a riff on traditional superhero comics by having the character break the fourth wall, like way before Deadpool was doing it, mind you, and putting her in ridiculous situations like working superhuman law cases for some of Marvel's most well-known and obscure characters, and even exploring the sexual side of superheroes, where She-Hulk has always been one of the more sexually active heroes in the same way that guys like Tony Stark and Matt Murdock have unapologetically fucked almost every woman in the Marvel Universe.
Jeez.
She-Hulk's comics have always been, first and foremost, fun, pairing comedy and action and legal wit. And I figured that the She-Hulk Attorney at Law show was really going to take on that tone, and I was really looking forward to it. And damn it, I was pretty much disappointed with this. If you guys haven't watched the She-Hulk television series, if you're curious, watch it. If you're not, I would say skip it because it's not all that satisfying, but if you do want to see it, skip this review for now because we get into spoilers regarding the season.
Well, I'm going to say, if you're on the fence, maybe don't even watch it because it doesn't contribute to anything in the MCU except for maybe like a cameo at the very end and an answer to what happened in Shang-Chi. But other than that, the whole thing just felt so pointless by the time I was done with it. It's a very self-contained story, and it feels very much like a departure from other things that Marvel Studios has done in the past. The reaction on the internet after the first few episodes as I was watching it was, what the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, you guys don't know. You've never read the books. You don't get that. She-Hulk is a non-traditional superhero in non-traditional stories. In the same vein as Deadpool, I guess, in a way?
Not really. I mean, the fourth wall breaks are the same, but Deadpool is still very much in the superhero genre, albeit with more comedy. She-Hulk is almost not even a superhero series. It's almost more like a legal comedy where there's a different case in every arc or sometimes every issue. As the season progressed and the show writers seemed to forego any sort of like arcing narrative or quality humor or recognizance of MCU canon, I also began to ask the same question that I felt like everyone else was asking, which is, what the fuck is this? The thing with She-Hulk comics is that even though they riff on the superhero genre, they're still reverential to the genre. You know, they respect the more traditional superhero stories. The She-Hulk comics weren't for people who didn't like Marvel's other stuff. In fact, it was probably the opposite, where She-Hulk was more enjoyable for people who loved the superhero genre and knew something about the writers and editors behind the stories, because sometimes those very creators would show up in the actual book. Like, for example, when She-Hulk wasn't happy with how a story was going, and she did a fourth wall break where she ripped through the pages to throw John Byrne off a building. Or something like that, you know? It was funny stuff. Huh. And while the She-Hulk television series may similarly riff on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it seems that just like how the idea of being a superhero was not appealing to Jennifer Walters, the idea of a superhero show was not appealing to the showrunners. It's like they tried to create a series for people who actually don't like these stories. You know, the humor was apologetic and cavalier. Byrne and Slott, the comic writers, knew that a good riff doesn't mean being apologetic of the tropes and formulas you're spoofing, but embracing them to help craft a compelling story. And that is what makes good satire. Satire is tricky. It's really hard to get right. It's almost an art form. It's not just something anyone can do.
I think one of the biggest gripes I had with the initial episodes was the fact that Jennifer Walters came across as the woman who kind of hates comic books. And as a guy who likes comic books, it wasn't a fun experience watching these initial episodes because the things that she thought were silly are the things that are kind of beloved to me.
Well, I mean, like, you try not to take it personally, right? Because, you know, not everybody's going to be into this stuff. But right. You have Jennifer Walters explicitly saying being a superhero does not sound appealing to me whatsoever. And you're like, well, why am I watching this? You know?
Exactly.
As a fan of superheroes.
Yeah.
One might say that I should give the She-Hulk show creators the benefit of the doubt, though, because their job is way harder than the comic book writers and artists, because we're talking about a live action show here. You know, comics themselves can be inherently more silly and whimsical just because everything is drawn and not acted. You know, live action has different requirements. It requires a special effects budget, a runtime, loads more nuance than drawings on a page. You know, seeing She-Hulk have sex with a guy in the comics is whimsical. It's like, hey, yeah, she banged another dude. That's funny. But, you know, seeing She-Hulk have sex with a guy in live action is an entirely different story. And, you know, they never showed that here, but, you know, for good reason. And while I like to think that there's not a huge difference between the mediums of comics and live action film or shows, there are differences, and it's really never more apparent than when the subject is satire. You know, humor plays so differently. So to that, you know, it's not fair to the showrunners that they had this harder task, but I don't want to make excuses for them. You know, Marvel has made a name for itself in adapting these stories successfully in a way that other studios just haven't been able to pull off as well. You know, if anyone should have been able to make this good, it should have been Marvel.
I mean, not that Marvel made Deadpool, but I mean, look at those films for an example of how this works.
Deadpool could, I think, accurately be described as a parody, a riff on traditional superhero movies. And Deadpool kind of gets a pass because it could be so much more crude due to the nature of the character. But yeah, I think She-Hulk should have taken a lot more cues from how the Deadpool movies gave their delivery, basically. Largely, She-Hulk came across as just lazy. I'm not talking about like the fucking atrocity that the last episode was. That was the laziest fucking thing I've ever seen in almost any movie or show. Beyond that, the writers didn't show us She-Hulk's character growth. They told us. It's like, you know, Jennifer says she's better at handling her anger because she's infinitely more practiced at it from all the strife that she suffers in her daily life. Okay, sure, I accept that. But show us where she came from so we can see where she grows.
I think they kind of attempted to do that, you know, when she was kind of catcalled by those three guys outside of the bar right before Bruce tackled her. I think there was a glimpse, perhaps.
But that was just a slightest ambiguous peek at what should have been much more. It's not that I don't believe what she's saying. I just want to at least see it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Also, in terms of laziness, you know, the writers took existing characters and ideas from the MCU and just ditched the canon instead of working with it. You know, take the particular backstory of Emil Blonsky, a great character from the Incredible Hulk film. They just flushed all that shit down the toilet in order to make him a guy who would have a retreat that Jennifer could visit to sort out her own shit. God forbid they expanded Abomination's role to anything beyond that in this show, but they didn't.
It seemed very, very out of left field for the character. Maybe they were like trying to subvert our expectations for the character, but then they never really did at the end. It was just bad writing.
He just ended up this like weirdo.
Yeah. I'm so sick of Marvel taking all of these badass characters and just making them a joke. It was disrespectful.
Still on the subject of laziness, they build the show as a legal comedy. This is not a legal comedy. I would not describe it as that. Legal comedies like Ally McBeal include a new compelling legal situation every episode that mirrors the primary character's personal struggle. And this show didn't really do that. There wasn't even a legal case in every episode. I read a Variety article where the writers themselves admitted that no one in the writer's room found they were able to write compelling courtroom scenes, so they just kind of wrote around it.
So get someone who can write courtroom scenes.
Exactly.
And all of the cases that were in this show, I felt like by the end, none of them mattered. Like none of them were integral to the plot in any way.
Not many of them, no. They were just kind of like shoehorned in, basically.
Totally.
But yeah, I think they established that Ally McBeal was kind of like the inspiration for this. That was a great example of working within the legal comedy genre and correlating what happens in her professional life with her personal life.
I feel like Daredevil was like the perfect example of how you balance law with superhero action and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they already had a good template. Daredevil, Deadpool, come on. You didn't need to reinvent the wheel here.
No. Another point when it comes to the writer's laziness is that they took Jennifer Walters, putting her in this situation where she now has powers and is overseeing these new complex superhero law cases, and they decided to shift her primary conflict to dating and her love life. It seemed so reductive given that we've seen tons of romantic comedies before, and they had this opportunity to really do something new with that here, but it's like they just exchanged one set of tropes for another. Like they so despised the superhero formula, but also they had Jennifer at her most content when she finally found a guy that she connected with.
I mean, for a show that criticizes cliches so much, you don't get more cliche than that for a female-led show.
Exactly. It's not a good look. All of this laziness, it just made everything within the show kind of feel cheap and not thought out, and for the most part, uninteresting. And I said earlier that I kind of feel shitty critiquing the show so harshly because one of the themes of the show was toxic fan bases. And I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to have anything to do with that. But criticizing She-Hulk attorney at law makes me feel like one of those douchebags that rags on everything that has a strong female lead out of like misogyny or ignorance or misplaced anger. And that's not the case on my part.
Yeah, I mean, the comics. I feel like a lot of that comes from people not being familiar with the comics, not knowing that there's, a female Thor or that, She-Hulk had her own very successful comic. Like, there have been girl versions of male superheroes since Supergirl, for a really long time.
Right, exactly. And it seems like all these people are coming out of the woodwork claiming that these female superheroes are trying to advance some kind of like feminist agenda, when in reality, these characters have been around long before most of these idiots were even born. The issues that I have with She-Hulk attorney at law doesn't have anything to do with feminism. There's a bunch of guys out there who are crying foul over the fact that She-Hulk twerked in one episode. Who cares? Like, let people fucking dance if they want to have fun dancing. She-Hulk has always been this kind of empowering, positive, feel-good character, and I totally see her as someone who would twerk to a song with her favorite music artist.
Dude, yeah, I had no problems with it.
Yeah. One of the sucky things, though, is that in the show's defense against online trolls, the showrunners forgot that the best defense would have been if the show was actually good. I feel like since they came out against trolls and didn't back it up with the quality, they basically just gave the toxic fandom all the more ammo to attack them with, which is a shame.
Yeah, and a lot of those same toxic fans are now probably going to feel vindicated.
Which sucks. But just kind of the hole they dug themselves. I do feel like I should at least mention what I liked about the show. I think the best thing about the show was probably its tone. It wasn't laugh out loud funny, but it was lighthearted and enjoyable in that regard. It felt kind of light and fresh, which is new for, Marvel Studios television shows. And the other big thing that I liked about the show was actually its lead. Tatiana Maslany, I thought was a great star, but let's go ahead and talk about her and the rest of the cast in our character breakdown. So She-Hulk, aka Jennifer Walters, was played by Tatiana Maslany. I think she was a solid actress in this show. Even though I don't think like the story or characterization of Jennifer did her any favors, it's definitely a case of the actor being better than the material. But she was definitely believable as Mark Ruffalo's cousin, and she did a great job at being relatable. I think she really sold Jennifer's awkwardness, which served as a great dichotomy between her and She-Hulk's more confident persona.
Oh man, I remember when I first learned that Tatiana Maslany was going to be playing Jennifer Walters, I was thrilled. Like you said, I thought she makes a great cousin for Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner. And at no point in this series, I would say, was I ever disappointed by the fact that she was cast. Like, even though I didn't care for the show, Tatiana Maslany's performance was still noteworthy.
Yeah, never did I think, oh, that was a horrible delivery. More often than not, I found myself saying, oh, she actually pulled off that horribly written line, you know?
Yeah.
How did she make that work?
Honestly, I think if anyone else was cast in the role,
It would have been the end of their career, probably.
yeah, this series would have been so much worse than what we actually got.
Yeah. Now, in this season, She-Hulk's arc was one of self-discovery and finding her confidence, coming into her own professionally and personally. I think her journey represented a period in life that many of us go through, where we start off probably thinking we know more than we do, and then through a series of humbling events and moments of growth, we come out more sure of our role and place in life. You know, it's a nice arc, theoretically, but I won't say that the show actually pulled it off successfully. You know, I mentioned before, if they wanted to sell us on this journey, they should have explored more of Jennifer's life prior to becoming She-Hulk, and they should have presented it as something that she was struggling to succeed in. Like, did it feel to you like she actually grew during the series a whole lot?
Well, no, because like, you know, at the very end, she demonstrated that she's not as maybe great at dealing with her anger as she thought.
Yeah.
So it kind of countered that whole notion, which I thought we had kind of moved on from.
Yeah, and there was no real consequence to that lesson.
Instead, she just kind of decided, hey, all this writing sucks, and I'm just going to change everything.
Oh my God. Yeah, we'll get to that. What did you think of the look of She-Hulk?
It's largely the look from the comics, which I love how faithful it is. And like the comics, she's hella fine.
So many guys have a thing for the green.
I didn't actually think that her face was going to translate into She-Hulk as well as it did, but it really did. I think it was, again, perfect casting on Marvel's behalf.
Yeah, you could really see her performance through the She-Hulk character. You know, the special effects weren't perfect. They definitely weren't movie quality.
No,
but it was pretty rare that I found myself distracted by the special effects. I think they were good enough largely for the purposes of the story.
I don't know. I think I was always aware. I wouldn't say distracted, but after a while, I kind of just accepted it, I guess. You know, it is what it was.
There were fewer like uncanny valley weirdness moments than I thought there would be. Somewhere along the way, visual effects studios really finally managed to bridge that gap.
Well, I mean, it's Disney animators, so, you know, they're at the top of their game, right?
Yeah.
I do have to say that despite the CG nature of the performance, Tatiana Maslany's performance definitely shined through that, so much so that it was actually able to move me. Like in the courtroom scene when she was hearing that like the guy was interested in She-Hulk, but not so much Jen Walters.
Yes.
Just like the look on her face of just like being humiliated, but just like trying to suffer through it with a strong face was so good.
That stood out to me as well. Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up because, I definitely thought that was one of her performance's highlights. All in all, you know, I'm as much as I didn't like this season, I really hope that we see more of She-Hulk, which I think is just a great testament to Tatiana more than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah. If this is the only time we see Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk, that'll be super, super sad. Because honestly, I think she's great enough to be a mainstay in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, she could be a primary Avenger.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, cut back probably a little bit on the fourth wall breaking, but there you go.
Let's go ahead and move on to Abomination, aka Emil Blonsky, played by Tim Roth. We've talked about him a lot already. I thought it was kind of sucky that they took the character in a completely different direction here. And yeah, you know, it's been approximately 15 or so years, continuity-wise, since the events of the Incredible Hulk movie. But Emil Blonsky was defined in that film by his desire to be a fighter. And I could understand that that amount of time in prison can change someone. But his zen, peaceful transformation made it hard to recognize him as the same character that we've seen before.
I mean, we don't want to forget, this is still the Abomination.
Right.
We should still be afraid of him. He should still be a threat.
I think it would have been better story-wise for Blonsky's spiritual retreat to be an actual facade for the intelligentsia, since, they ended up meeting there anyway, holding their event.
Super sloppy.
Yeah, this would have been cool as part of a larger plan of Blonsky's to get revenge on the Hulk and keep the Abomination as a villain and not some, doped up Zen counselor.
I feel like they totally could have done that too. They had almost nearly set that up and could have probably done a better job of setting that up, but it was there, even if they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I heard that this was originally supposed to be 10 episodes, and this whole thing, was Frankensteined the shit out of. The first episode was originally the 6th episode, where we see her training as She-Hulk. I guess
really?
That was supposed to be much later in the series. And you kind of get this disconnect throughout the whole thing in the way none of the episodes fit together as nicely as they probably should.
Yeah, it's really easy to get that impression that everything just kind of fell together, which may have been exacerbated in the last episode where literally everything fell together and she was like, none of this makes sense. And then they ended up having to, fourth wall break to fix everything. But
right.
God, that was so bad.
They overdid that so much. Ugh.
Well, we'll get there. Let's go ahead and move on to our next character, Titania, a.k.a. Mary McFerrin, played by Jamila Jamil.
I like Jamila Jamil as an actress. She is very funny and spunky, and I feel really bad for what they did with her and her character in this show.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not even sure how to comment on Titania in this because I'm sure that Jamila's performance was what the showrunners were going for, but it was just so batshit fucking stupid that I'm at a loss for words. I don't think Jamila's casting was a mistake, but everything around her was, from the backstory or lack thereof, the costuming, the acting direction, the writing, which includes her lack of character resolution. It was all bad, and Jamila, I think, was let down here.
Yeah, if I were her, I would be pissed by what happened with her character. I don't know what else was supposed to happen with her character in the original 10-episode plan, but this was really bad, I think, for her. And not only story-wise, but also, look-wise. That wig was so fake, it was
so bad. Yeah. And Titania is She-Hulk's arch nemesis. It's really a shame that it seems like she won't be done justice. Maybe she'll show up again if there's a season 2 as a recurring nemesis, but hopefully they write her better.
Is she just super strong in the comics? Is that her power?
Yes. Yeah, she was given power by Dr. Doom, who had created a device that was siphoning power from the Beyonder, I think, during the original Secret Wars event.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, you got no hint of why she was superpowered in this show. They didn't go into her character at all.
Exactly. It's a shame. Let's go ahead and move on to Hulk, a.k.a. Bruce Banner, who is played by Mark Ruffalo. He didn't have much to do here. He was really only in the first and last episodes with a minor appearance in the second. But it was pretty fun, I think, to see this established superhero character who we've spent so much time with, to see more of his personal life, spending time with his family, mentoring his cousin, then coming back from Sakaar with his son, Scar, which was a surprise to see here. I have no idea where they're going with Scar since they never did the World War Hulk storyline after he came back from his Planet Hulk arc in Thor Ragnarok. It is rumored that all of these Hulk characters will show up again in the upcoming Captain America New World Order movie, since we know the leader's going to be in it. Actually, now that I think about it, what if the New World Order subtitle is a reference to World Breaker Hulk? Maybe the leader mind controls Hulk into taking over the world for him, and Captain America, She-Hulk, and Red Hulk and Scar have to come together to stop him.
That seems like a stretch.
Yeah.
But who knows? I feel like Scar is sort of a replacement for Hulkling. They're setting up all of the Young Avengers, right? Scar, I think, could easily just take on the role of Hulkling in a Young Avengers type team.
I kind of hate that idea, but I also don't hate that idea. I think it could be easily stated that Kyra, who is Scar's mother, was not one of the Shadow people, but a Skrull, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's who Hulk hooked up with while on Sakaar. And therefore, maybe they give Scar shapeshifting powers and he takes on the guise of Teddy Altman or something like that. I could see that working.
Totally.
Who knows?
We already have Skrulls in the MCU, so why not?
I typically don't like it when the films merge multiple characters into one, but I could totally see that working and being just fine with it. Let's go ahead and move on to Daredevil, a.k.a. Matt Murdock, played by fucking Charlie Cox. It's so damn good to see Matt Murdock back in the MCU beyond his brief cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home. It was like welcoming an old friend back. It was really nice. Albeit a little bit weird to see his character outside the tone of his own show and within this comedy series. It was very off tonally, but I still think that Charlie's performance was spot on.
I like Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, but I would say that I kind of wish they left him out of this series entirely.
Really?
I don't really like anything they did with this character here. Like from the costume down to the fucking family barbecue to traveling all the way to LA to defend the guy who made his shitty costume. None of it, I think, felt right.
Yeah, my wife really didn't like the fact that She-Hulk hooked up with Daredevil. I think it felt right. I think they could have made a cute couple. They seemed to be kind of like on the same wavelength.
I didn't like that she jumped his bones so easily after the heartache that was Josh. Was that his name?
You got to move on, man. You got to just
guess.
let that shit go. If you don't get respect, you got to move on to somebody who will respect you. And she saw the goodness in Matt Murdock, and she wanted to kind of, take advantage of the situation before he left back to New York. I could totally see why she did it. And that was not a pun, but I did like the pun that she gave in the last episode when she was like, I smash fourth walls and bad endings and sometimes Daredevil. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess.
I'll agree with you, though, that I did not like the yellow costume. Of course, the yellow costume was what he first had in the comic book stories before switching to all red. It is a little bit weird to see him with a lesser costume in the MCU than what he had on the Netflix show. I really just can't wait for him to get back in red.
Yeah, I'm like, no one ever liked the yellow and red costume. Let's just skip that entirely. If anything, stick with like the black makeshift one. We never need to see the yellow one again, as far as I'm concerned.
That does it for all the major characters. Let's go ahead and get into our episode highlights. Episode 1 was called A Normal Amount of Rage. In this flashback episode, Jennifer Walters goes on a road trip with her cousin Bruce when their car is run off the road by a Sakaran starship. While rescuing Bruce from the wreckage, the blood from his wounds contaminates the blood from Jennifer's, and she turns into the She-Hulk. After wandering into a backcountry bar where she is almost assaulted, Bruce takes her to his secret laboratory in Mexico, where he informs Jennifer of her condition and tries to train her in the use of her new powers. She excels at his training, and they discover that not only can she effortlessly control her transformation, but that she retains her own mind as She-Hulk. Despite Bruce's concern regarding the potential danger she poses, she returns back to work as a lawyer. In court, a superpowered influencer called Titania bursts through the wall, and Jennifer transforms into She-Hulk to stop her. Now, I have so many issues with how this episode sets up the rest of the series. I honestly probably have more issues with this origin setup than anything else in the show. Because really, I found it as inferior to the one in the comics where she was prosecuting a mobster and they shot her for it. And then Bruce had to provide her with a blood transfusion to save her life. That whole scenario there was far more interesting than really anything that happened in this entire season. And I don't understand why they went the route of just having some of his blood inadvertently drop onto some of her blood. It's the least interesting origin ever.
Absolutely. Like, I even told my wife the true origin of She-Hulk after the pilot ended. And she was like, what? That was so much. But why did they go this route? I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah. And what's weird is that the MCU already had a precedent for those who came into contact with the Hulk's blood when Stan Lee got radiation poisoning in the Incredible Hulk movie when he drank that soda.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I was like, did Stan Lee also turn into a Hulk?
If all it takes to become a Hulk was a simple blood cross-contamination, then you have to think about how that really changes the Incredible Hulk movie. Take Samuel Stearns, who became the leader, who was fascinated by Hulk's power and was sent samples of Bruce's blood. All he had to do was inject himself with one of those blood samples, and he would have become his own version of the Hulk, just like Hulk King did at the end. And what's weird is that Hulk King also seemed to retain his own mind and personality after his injection.
That's true.
And I thought they had established in this show, Bruce told Jennifer that it was certain genetic factors that led to their unique Hulk transformation.
Fucking show.
Yeah.
Show sucks.
Yeah, and also, you have to think about the implications. Really, Hulk and She-Hulk have no fucking business being in their human forms if it's really that easy to inadvertently create new Hulks.
Yeah, it's irresponsible of them to do so, in fact.
Yeah.
Why would Bruce Banner even create a device that would keep him as Bruce Banner if he has all the advantages of being Bruce Banner in his Smart Hulk form?
Exactly. And without the risk of getting a simple drop of blood on somebody, which can be so catastrophic.
I also thought that this show was setting up sort of like an ongoing issue and conflict that would be faced throughout the season, and that like Sakaar ships kept confronting the Hulk.
Yeah, they never really explained that. I wonder if the whole reason they showed up on Earth was to notify Bruce that he had a son or something like that.
And
That's
all
what I
of that
assumed.
happened behind the scenes. And I would love to know that story, and I feel like we're never going to get it because of this dumb show. Fuck!
I really think that Jennifer Walters introduced herself as a pretty unlikable lead character in this first episode, because I think she was needlessly combative with Bruce, whose concerns about her condition were genuine. You know, being a Hulk is not something one should just brush off, as she appeared to try to do in this first episode. The first line of this entire season is Jennifer asking what the responsibility is of those with power, and yet she herself seemed uninterested in that question. That would have been a great theme for the overall season.
Oh, totally. That opening, like closing argument speech was fantastic, and I felt like it was completely wasted.
Yeah, like I thought they were going to use it to set up the themes of the show, and it really had no bearing on anything.
Like, just talking about this makes me dislike the show even more.
Well, then you're not going to like what I have to say now, because you mentioning the power inhibitor just brought up another plot hole to me, because in this first episode, Jennifer begs Bruce to make her a power inhibitor like the one he was wearing at the start of the episode, so that she wouldn't have to transform. And Bruce basically tells her he can't because it was a prototype that was calibrated to him, right? But at the end of the series, she's given a power inhibitor. Abomination had the same thing too. And granted, you know, it didn't seem to prevent him from actually transforming, but that whole thing is just like as uncoordinated as anything else in this show.
I totally forgot she was given a power inhibitor at the end. Like, what the hell even happened with that? Did she take it off? We never saw that.
She broke it right before she busts through the Disney Plus welcome screen.
So it happened off camera?
Yeah, it happened off camera.
Stupid.
You just hear it, basically. She's like, let me break this inhibitor, and then she crashes through the screen.
Of course.
Kinda, yeah.
I hated everything about that, by the way.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's move on to episode 2, which was called Superhuman Law. In it, the courtroom fight between She-Hulk and Titania gains Jennifer notoriety. She is fired from the district attorney's office since they believe her hero status would inadvertently influence a jury. So Jennifer visits her family while looking for a job, and she's offered a position at Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway, a prominent firm. They ask her to lead their new superhuman law division as She-Hulk, with their first case being the parole hearing of the Abomination, who turned over a new leaf since his time in prison and signed a conflict waiver so Jennifer could represent him. After thinking it over and getting approval from Bruce, who was on his way to Sakaar, Jennifer takes the case. I honestly thought the reason that Abomination personally requested Jennifer specifically to represent him was because there was some nefarious plot going on.
Totally.
Otherwise, why her? Made no sense. Any lawyer could have done that job.
No, absolutely.
It felt personal, that selection, you know, but they did nothing with it.
I thought they were going to make him much more of like a manipulative Hannibal Lecter type. And it turns out that what we saw was pretty much exactly what we got. And that's so disappointing.
I did think Blonsky's perspective was pretty interesting on how he blamed his Harlem rampage on the U.S. government, who ordered him to take down the Hulk, and how he thought he was like going to be Captain America. I thought that was pretty convincing. But it also makes you think that if Blonsky had really become this good guy, why didn't the U.S. government clear him psychologically and then use him as a super soldier? You know, the fact that they kept him incarcerated only means that they didn't trust him, which would imply that he's untrustworthy and then therefore still a villain.
And you'd also think that they would still consider him an asset and property of the United States government if they made the Abomination. So I find it difficult to believe that they would just let him go and start his own retreat without making him go on missions or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah, this show fucking dropped the ball with that character, completely butchered him. Let's go ahead and move on to episode 3, The People versus Emil Blonsky. In it, Jennifer learns that Blonsky fought with Wong in an underground fight club, and she meets with Wong, who agrees to testify at his hearing that he broke Abomination out of prison as he needed a worthy opponent as part of his training to become the Sorcerer Supreme. After showing the board that he can control his Abomination form, Blonsky is granted parole. Meanwhile, Jennifer's new colleague, Pug, represents her former colleague, Dennis, in a case he brings against a shape-shifting elf from New Asgard who impersonated the rapper Megan Thee Stallion. With both cases won, Jennifer is attacked walking back to her apartment by the Wrecking Crew, who were working for the intelligentsia and trying to extract a blood sample from her. A few things. So the rationalization for the Wong versus Abomination fight scene was, I think, fucking bogus. You know, Wong needed to prove as part of his Sorcerer Supreme training that he could take on worthy foes, right? But like, the dude fucking fought against Thanos and his army.
And that monster character from Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
It really makes me question whether the whole thing in Shang-Chi was thought through, or I don't know what happened there, honestly.
It seems like they wrote themselves in a corner and then just came up with some bullshit to get themselves out. It was strange that at the very end, mid-credits scene in the last episode, they had Wong break Abomination out of prison again. Like, I still have no idea what the hell's going on there.
Why is Wong breaking criminals out of prison?
Exactly. It still couldn't possibly be for the purposes of his Sorcerer Supreme training, right? So either his reasoning was bullshit in front of the parole board, or there's something else going on.
Well, he said that he had offered Emil like sanctuary in Carmitage earlier, and maybe Emil was just taking him up on the offer again. But it really kind of made Wong look stupid and like he had no respect for the authority of other nations.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I have no idea where it's going. We'll have to see. It fucking breaks my heart, though, what this show did to the Wrecker and his wrecking crew. You know, in the comics, Wrecker, Piledriver, Bulldozer, and Thunderbolt were given powers by Loki, and in the show, they just stole New Asgardian construction tools. In the comics, they're like pretty fucking powerful. They were part of the Masters of Evil team, and as a group working together, they'd be a really tough match for She-Hulk. They'd tear up the whole fucking city block. But here, they were treated like they were just nothing. There was this opportunity here for this really awesome action scene, and they just squandered it completely.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that. I thought that the new Asgardian tools probably would have put up more of a fight than they actually did.
Yeah, exactly. And then what they did later with the character of the Wrecker was just, what the fuck?
Made no sense. Made no sense whatsoever. Because he was working for Intelligentsia, so you think he would have been a little bit more apprehensive to direct She-Hulk to an Intelligentsia meeting.
Exactly. What the hell happened there?
The worst writing I've ever seen on a show.
Yeah, and it feels like it's just getting worse as we go through this. Episode 4 was called Is This Not Real Magic? Wong solicits GLK&H to sue a stage magician named Donnie Blaze, who is kicked out of Carmitage for the misuse of his magic powers and is using real magic irresponsibly in his magic shows. Jennifer takes the case and files a suit against Donnie. Meanwhile, after getting little to no engagement on the Matcher dating app as Jennifer, she decides to create a new profile as She-Hulk, where she gets a lot of matches and goes on a lot of bad dates, including one with Todd Phelps, a rich guy who seems overly fascinated with her powers. She takes the one good date she goes on home, but she gets interrupted by Wong, who asks for her help fighting creatures that came through a portal opened by Donnie Blaze. Blaze then signs a cease and desist to stop performing real magic in exchange for stopping the creatures. After going back home and sleeping with her date, She-Hulk realizes the next morning as Jennifer that he was only into her She-Hulk form.
Is Donnie Blaze a character from the comics?
No, it's a stage name of this made-up character that is uncomfortably close to Johnny Blaze, which I don't appreciate.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. And I was like, one of the things I really like about the MCU is that its writers and its creators seem like they're fans of the comic. So for these writers to name a character Donnie Blaze makes me feel like they're not fans of the comic, because then they would know that Johnny Blaze is the fucking Ghost Rider.
Yeah, and to have no correlation between these characters is bizarre. When and if the time comes to eventually introduce Johnny Blaze into the MCU, it's going to be like, oh, his name is so similar to the guy that was introduced prior, Donnie Blaze. You know, it's stupid.
And the fact that he like summoned demons and stuff like that, it was way too close for comfort.
Yeah, I hated it. This was the episode with Madison, that drunk girl, who I actually thought was kind of funny. I loved the mid-credits scene for this one because, you know, it's throwaway, but it's basically Madison and Wong watching a movie, talking about all the cocktails that he's tried. I kind of like fancy myself an amateur mixologist, and I like cocktails and stuff. I thought it was really interesting that Wong's favorite drink was a gin and tonic.
I liked Madison. I hated that mid-credit scene because I felt like we were promised something more from She-Hulk. And then it was like another one of those Captain America, sometimes you're disappointed kind of scenes.
Yeah. Episode 5 was called Mean, Green, and Straight Poured Into These Jeans. Titania, who is cleared of all charges for some reason, trademarks the name She-Hulk for use in a new beauty products collection. Titania sues Jennifer over the name use, and JLK&H countersues, assigning Mallory Book to the case to prove that Jennifer was using the name She-Hulk prior to the product line. They establish using the testimonies of the men Jennifer dated using her She-Hulk profile that Jennifer had claim to the name, and Titania is defeated in court. Meanwhile, Nikki and Pug get Jennifer a consultation with Luke Jacobson, a high-end tailor for superheroes who creates new suits for her work as well as a superhero costume.
Is Luke Jacobson a character in the comics?
I actually had to look that up. Apparently he is, but he's been in like 3 comics in his entire existence.
Well, that makes sense to me because I feel like superhero outfits are something that always need to be explained in movies, but never need to be explained in the comics. It's just like you're a superhero. Of course you have a superhero outfit.
Right, exactly. I do have to say that as far as all the B plots go in all of these episodes, the one that had Nikki and Pug dressed up in like bootleg Avengers gear while trying to get an appointment with Luke Jacobson was the stupidest shit I've ever seen.
Totally. It was Avengers gear. Don't forget.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to episode 6, which was called Just Jen. In it, Jennifer gets invited by her old friend Lulu to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. She arrives as She-Hulk, but Lulu tells her to remain as Jennifer only, and she saddles her with a bunch of pre-wedding duties. Titania shows up to make things more difficult, but Jennifer hits it off with a guy named Josh, who seems genuinely interested in her. Meanwhile, Mallory and Nikki take on a divorce case between Mr. Immortal and his ex-wives, who learned from a website called Intelligentsia that Mr. Immortal faked his deaths to get out of his individual marriages to them. At the wedding, Titania attacks Jennifer and they fight, but Titania slips on some ice, breaking her veneers and getting humiliated. Nikki warns Jennifer about the toxic statements made about her that she and Mallory found on the Intelligentsia website.
Where to start? I hate the fact that Marvel is just having all of these superpowered beings in existence, like Titania, like Mr. Immortal, without any explanation. Like, they are past due for introducing mutants into this universe.
Well, Mr. Immortal is a type of mutant. He's an evolved life form, actually beyond mutants. But yeah, it's like superpowered beings are just part of reality now within the MCU. I did think it was cool that Mr. Immortal made an appearance. He's such an obscure character from the GLA, the Great Lakes Avengers comics. There was a great GLA run back in the 2000s. That was really funny. But Titania was done no justice here. Like, that fucking slip on that ice cube and like her teeth busting out, and like, it was so fucking stupid.
It was like slapstick idiocy. Yeah. And so unbelievably embarrassing. Is that how they get out of a big action scene in the show? By having someone slip on fucking ice? It might as well have been a banana peel.
Exactly.
Like, that would have been only slightly less embarrassing.
The show copped out on nearly every single one of the fight scenes it had. Honestly, I think the best fight scene actually was when She-Hulk fought alongside Wong against all of those demon bat creatures.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know how upset you are? I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you more upset.
Okay, cool.
Do you know what the Intelligentsia is?
In the comics?
Yeah.
No.
It's like the villain Illuminati. It's a cabal of highly intelligent supervillains that consists of the leader, MODOK, Dr. Doom,
What?
Egghead, all these badass villains. And here, it's run by a dude bro with misogyny issues. They fucking destroyed what the Intelligentsia is and could have been in the MCU.
Was that dude bro? I forget his name. Is he a character in the comics?
Nope.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Dude, if anyone listening to this is still a Marvel fan after hearing this, like, shame on you. Shame on you. Because Marvel hates you.
It has nothing, it's not Marvel in general. It's just the show. This show hates you.
Holy shit. That is sad. I'm sad now.
Intelligentsia could have been fucking awesome to see those supervillain minds team up.
Fucking MODOK, the leader, Dr. Doom?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep.
Wow. Were you excited when you first heard their name? Like, did you think we were actually going to see that?
I thought we were going to get the leader. Yeah, that's what I thought.
I totally thought we were going to get the leader too, honestly. I thought this whole thing was going to be a setup for New World Order.
Right, I thought it was going to be the leader behind the Intelligentsia who was also pulling the Abomination strings as part of this grander plot.
But Jen was like, no, that stuff is silly and stupid and no one likes it.
Let's go ahead and move on to episode 7, which is called The Retreat. After several successful dates with Josh, Jennifer sleeps with him and then gets frustrated when he then inexplicably ghosts her. She and Blonsky's probation officer go to his spiritual retreat to check on a malfunctioning inhibitor, and her car gets wrecked by retreat guests Manbull and El Aguila. Stuck at the retreat until the tow truck arrives, Jennifer gets a tour of Blonsky's facility as she desperately searches for a signal on her phone. She attends a group therapy session and comes to terms with Josh ghosting her and deletes him from her phone. In a flashback, it's revealed that Josh downloaded a copy of Jennifer's phone data and stole a sample of her blood, sending it to Hulk King, leader of the intelligentsia.
Now, were the members of the retreat group therapy session characters from the comics, like Eligila or the Man-Bull?
Yes, they both are. Yeah, Man-Bull, though, is supposed to look more like a legit Minotaur, and he looked so stupid in the show. Eligila is a hero, a mutant character who can channel electricity through conductive materials like his sword. All the characters were real, though.
And were you happy with those interpretations?
No, they were all pretty bad. Moving on to episode 8, which is called Ribbit and Rip It. This is actually the best episode of the entire season, I think. The wannabe superhero Leapfrog experiences a malfunction with his booster boots while trying to apprehend some thieves. He gets Jennifer to represent him in a lawsuit against his costume's tailor, Luke Jacobson, claiming the outfit was faulty. Jacobson gets represented by lawyer Matt Murdock, who helps deduce that Leapfrog incorrectly fueled his boots with jet fuel. After the trial, Jennifer and Matt hit it off in a bar when he suddenly has to leave. Then, Jennifer gets a call from Leapfrog, who is being attacked by Daredevil. She dons her superhero suit and fights Daredevil, allowing Leapfrog to get away. After unmasking the hero and realizing he's Matt Murdock, he reveals to Jennifer that Leapfrog has actually kidnapped Luke Jacobson to try and force him to make him a new suit. Together, She-Hulk and Daredevil attack Leapfrog's henchmen, and Leapfrog is arrested. Jennifer and Matt end up sleeping together. She-Hulk later attends a gala where she wins an award for Female Lawyer of the Year. During the ceremony, Intelligentsia hijacks the screen to show a sex tape between her and Josh. Losing it, She-Hulk smashes the screen, resulting in a panic, and she is arrested. I think this is the best episode of the series, largely because, there's legal drama and there's superhero action, which were probably some of the bigger gripes I have with the show overall, was that it didn't have enough of either of those.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this episode was slightly better than the rest of them. The end kind of ruined it for me, though, especially when Jen's character kept saying, like, shouldn't the episode be over? Like, what's going on? What's this twist going to be? And I was like, what? I didn't get that vibe at all that the episode should be over. Yeah. What are you even talking about?
Exactly. It's like the show was trying to be cleverer than it was. Really, an episode ends when it fucking ends. So, don't keep trying to convince us that it was supposed to be over because some kind of twist is coming up. Not only are you ruining the twist, you're just making yourself look stupid regarding your own show.
And I get that the twist was that, Intelligentsia hijacked the whole ceremony, but I thought She-Hulk's reaction to that was highly appropriate and not worth being, imprisoned for.
No, and she makes that claim, and I think that's why she was offered a plea deal for no charges being pressed.
That, of course, is in the next episode, but, did you have a favorite Daredevil moment in this episode?
Yeah, it was kind of funny, the approach that the two took to fighting crime. He's like, we got to do this stealthily. And she's like, no, you just go in and smash. And he's like, no, I got this. And it was really cool seeing him in action again. He was so badass, and I really loved the way he used his billy club during this fight. And then to have, She-Hulk drop in through the ceiling and destroy these other guys, I thought it was just a whole lot of fun. I really liked this episode. The Walk of Shame was actually kind of funny, too. I thought that was a funny
hated that.
Visual gag.
Yeah.
You did? Why?
Yeah. I just hate seeing Daredevil out in the daytime. Take off your fucking superhero suit. What are you doing?
It felt very She-Hulk comics to me, that moment.
Huh.
Let's move on to episode 9, the season finale, which was called Whose Show Is This? After a brief dream sequence that emulated the intro to the 1970s Incredible Hulk television show, Jennifer wakes up in a containment cell in the Department of Damage Control's Supermax prison. She learns that as part of the plea agreement to avoid charges, she has to wear an inhibitor device, and she's fired from GLK&H. Out of money, she's forced to move back in with her parents, where she tries to find out who the Hulk King is and the people behind Intelligentsia. Needing a break, she checks into Abomination's spiritual retreat, where he's serving as a motivational speaker at the Intelligentsia event being held there, coincidentally. Jennifer discovers this and learns that the Hulking is Todd Phelps, her former date that was obsessed with her powers in part because he felt she didn't earn them and therefore didn't deserve them. He uses Jennifer's stolen blood to transform himself into a Hulk when suddenly Titania and her cousin Bruce burst onto the scene. Confounded by everything, Jennifer breaks the fourth wall to speak to the show's writers, who claim that Kevin is in charge. She breaks into Kevin's office, where it's revealed that Kevin is an artificially intelligent robot, and his name is an acronym for Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnectivity Nexus. Jennifer expresses displeasure with her story and asks him to change it so that the ending focuses on her life falling apart as she was learning to be both Jennifer and She-Hulk. Todd does not become a Hulk. Bruce exits the scene. Abomination owns up to his parole violation, and Daredevil shows up inexplicably. With the offenders already arrested upon She-Hulk's return to her story and the conflict ended, Jennifer takes Matt to a family gathering to introduce him, and Bruce shows up back from space with his son, Scar. Walking up to the courtroom for her lawsuit against Todd Phelps and Intelligentsia, She-Hulk reinforces her role to a reporter as a champion for those who are wronged, both as a lawyer and a superhero. What the fuck happened with this episode?
Let's start at the beginning. The opening bit that was a callback to the old Incredible Hulk television series was fucking pointless.
I guess it was a bit of fun, but yeah, it had no bearing on anything. It was just done just because.
It was there to waste my time.
It was kind of cool.
It was cool, but like it would have been cooler if it had something to do with something which it didn't.
Yeah. This fourth wall break, though, is definitely the worst thing that happened in probably superhero history. You know, they entirely avoided the show's central conflict that they had building up to for 9 episodes. They presented this situation and then completely ignored it because when she came back, everything was wrapped up. It's not just unsatisfying, it's actually damaging to the narrative of the show, you know, because it probably would have been satisfying and cool to see She-Hulk beat the shit out of Todd Hulk, proving to him that it's not about earning your powers or how you get them, but what you do with them. They could have done that.
Totally.
You know, they should have taken it to the first line of the season about the responsibility of those with power. And it would have been awesome too if, like, you know, the Abomination turned out to be behind everything along with like the leader or something, Intelligentsia. And I thought we were actually going to get a pretty cool fight scene with Bruce teaming up with his cousin.
Oh my gosh. Like, that's why I watched the whole series, because I was expecting that.
Yeah, that would have been so cool, because it was so cool to see them train together. And he would have been able to see how she had grown during the course of their time apart, with her essentially admitting to Bruce that she now understood the consequences of losing your cool as a Hulk. You know, I think that would have been a perfect ending. And then, you know, finish it off with the family barbecue thing. But this was...
I could see the tears in your eyes.
I'm just shaking right now. I can't even finish my thought.
It was so bad. Like what happened with Intelligentsia then? What happened with Todd Phelps?
Well, essentially, we learned that She-Hulk is suing Todd Phelps and Intelligentsia, and she's walking to the case in the very last scene of the show. I actually think they should have had a 10th episode where we see that courtroom drama play out.
Why
and
not?
Then we actually see what happens to Todd and where he gets his comeuppance and everything like that. You know, here it was just very unsatisfying.
But the fourth wall break also just kind of like destroyed the narrative about obtaining her blood and the whole issue of blood that was set up in the first episode of the series. That's just erased from continuity now?
I don't know. It was so weird that she was complaining about the use of Hulk blood when that was the very thing that had given her powers, you know? When Todd first injected himself and she's like, this can't possibly be where the season is going. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's see you throw down.
Yeah. I was like, why the fuck not can't this be where the season was going? It's where it's been going to this whole fucking time.
She presented it like she was speaking on behalf of the audience when really she was just kind of speaking for herself. No one wanted the ending that she gave. No one.
When she was talking with Kevin, she was like, really? Like, haven't we seen that before? I was like, I haven't seen that since like Blade 2. Like, what are you talking about?
I certainly haven't seen the Hulk and She-Hulk team up for a big Hulk out battle like that before. That's certainly something I've always wanted to see. And now I'm not sure if we ever will.
And she was like, a big action scene at the end? Really? This isn't what people want. And I was like, what?
Do not speak for me.
Why have I been watching this show?
That's what it felt like. That was ultimately the big feeling that I had when the season ended.
I find it really hard to believe that Kevin Feige was okay with this.
Well, we said the same thing about like Thor: Love and Thunder. You know, there were so many questionable things that happened in that movie. But here's the thing. At least Thor: Love and Thunder had action. At least it didn't skirt its central conflict with a fourth wall break, avoiding any sort of satisfying ending. In that regard, I would say that She-Hulk Attorney at Law Season 1 is worse than Thor: Love and Thunder. My final rating of the show is 2 stars. I think it was very poorly written. The show did not deliver in terms of satire or action or anything satisfying beyond its tone and its star, and some cameos. We haven't rated anything this low in a long time.
I mean, I think I was going into this thinking it was like 2.5, like probably the same level as Love and Thunder. But just talking through it, like, this is really, really bad. Fire all of the writers,
never
abandon
bring
the
them back,
MCU, stop being a Marvel fan, burn it all to the ground.
What?
Yeah.
You lost me. You lost me
No.
about halfway there.
No.
Yeah.
I agree with you. 2 stars, maybe even 1.5.
We'll go with 2. 1.5 might be a little bit harsh because the production quality was still there. But yeah, that's it.
If DC ever came out with something as bad as this, I would abandon it. Like, I would be like, you were right all along, Joseph. You know?
I don't know
And
about that.
I feel like somewhat surprised that you're not doing that now.
Well, no. This is probably the closest I'll ever get. I'll just tell you that. Yeah. But also Marvel for life, fuck DC.
You blind fanboy!
That does it for this review, guys. Let us know what you thought about the show by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our website, you could also find a link to our Patreon page, where we offer ad-free episodes of the show, bonus content including top 10 episodes and bloopers, access to our Discord chat server, and the exclusive opportunity to get our Infinity Crisis Marvel vs. DC deck building card game. It's a lot of fun, guys. Again, check out patreon.com/dynamicduel right after this episode. It's linked in our show notes. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month.
Our next episode is going to be another review episode, this time of a DC project, Black Adam. Are you excited for it?
Hell yeah, I am. Dude, this thing looks awesome. The social media review embargo lifted last week after its premiere, and so much great stuff came out of it. It's stuff that I was really hoping to hear about the Black Adam film, but of course we'll see it and let you know all of our thoughts next week. You know, we were talking about peaks and valleys earlier on in this episode, and I gotta say, I feel like this is going to be a really good week in that Marvel's at like their lowest of lows and DC might be near the highest of highs.
I would manage your expectations because I've heard some not so great things about the Black Adam movie too.
No, I'm pumped. I
all right,
smell what The Rock is cooking. And
Ew.
yes, that felt weird to say. I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to be good though. I think it's going to be really fun.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, John Starosky, Zachary Hepburn, Dustyn Balcom, Miggy Matanguihan, Brandon Estergard, Nathaniel Wagner, Levi Yeaton, Austin Wesolowski, and AJ Dunkerley for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Up and away.
True believers.